Tuesday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the Extra Sports 1300 app to do your listening. And that app is sponsored by Diversus Health, Mental Health, and Well-Being for All. A veritable cornucopia of sports topics coming your way over the course of the program. And I'd love to get your thoughts. You can text into the show at 719-247-1313. Of course, you can also watch the show on our social media platforms, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and X. And if you do that, you'll notice that I'm not in my familiar surroundings. Off the top, I want to give a shout to the fine folks here at Cumulus Salt Lake City for letting me crash for a little bit to do this radio show before I head up to Logan for Air Force women's basketball tomorrow night against Utah State. So don't be alarmed if you're tuning in on the socials, because that's where I am. I'm in Salt Lake City. So let's get going here. Gave the contact info, and away we go here. So I said this after the Nuggets and Rockets played in the NBA Cup game. I said, we got to get a 7-game series between these two teams. Like we just have to. And it looks like we're going to at some point, probably. But we got to see 7 games of this. The first and foremost, the shot making ability, the skills that are on display between these two teams. And it goes further than this, but just look at the two stars of each team. You have Jokic and Murray on one side. You have KD and Alperen Şengün on the other. All, when they are on their game, are spectacular to watch. And in fact, last night became the first game ever in NBA history ever to have two centers notch triple doubles in the same game. That's never happened before. And Alperen Şengün and Nikola Jokic were able to do that last night. They were both absolutely brilliant. And if you remember the last meeting with Houston, Şengün didn't have a great game. So he stepped up in a big way. Şengün ended up with 33 points, 10 rebounds, and 10 assists. Nikola Jokic went 39 points. So teetering on that territory, we know, I've said this before, when Nikola Jokic gets 40 or more points, that's actually bad news for the Denver Nuggets. So he flirted with that. 39 points, 15 rebounds, and 10 assists. But then you go to Jamal Murray, who was brilliant last time these two teams met, played 43 minutes because the game went into overtime, 35 points on 9 of 17 shooting. And then you have KD on the other side, who even at his, by NBA standards, advanced age, puts up 25 along with 7 assists and 5 rebounds. So just those 4 players right there are worth the price of admission, just to see 7 games of those 4 players going at it. But you throw in Amen Thompson, you throw in Jabari Smith on the Rocket side. Nuggets a little bit shorthanded last night. Of course, Christian Brown, Aaron Gordon still out. They even had an injury to Peyton Watson. Apparently, they're calling it like blunt force trauma or something. It makes it sound way worse. He's got like a big bruise on his side. So we'll see how long Peyton Watson's out. But we know that with the Nuggets, when they get Aaron Gordon and Christian Brown back, they're even more lethal offensively. But the game goes into overtime. 128-125 is the final score. It's the skill level, it's the shot making, and then it's the chippiness. The chippiness between these two teams. It would make you think that these two teams have a history, and they don't. right? KD has a little bit of a history going against the Denver Nuggets, but the Houston Rockets don't. The chippiness in these games would you would think they were playing the Timberwolves, right? You think that there would be years past playoff, highly contentious playoff matchups between these two teams that lead to that kind of chippiness, but there's not. And therein lies the one negative about last night, because the chippiness, the physicality was a little bit too much for the officials to deal with. If we're being honest, they had a really, really difficult time officiating this game. And Ray Dominguez, who's in studio right now, he and I were texting each other the other night when we were watching the Spurs and Thunder game. And Ray brought up, why can't all games be officiated like this? And I seconded that emotion, because I thought, if you watched it, that semifinal between the Spurs and the Thunder, the referees were letting these guys play. They were letting them play. And it led to great theater. The last 2 minutes of the game didn't take 20 minutes like the last 2 minutes of last night's game took. It was just better. And it reminded me a little bit of like the 1990s, the way it was officiated back in Jordan's day, which I think is better. I get it. You don't want guys mugging each other, but there's a fine line there. And I thought last night the officials, they inserted themselves into the proceedings too much. That was a game between two high-level teams with talent all over the floor, and the focus needed to be on them. And unfortunately, late in the game, they really came into focus because the Nuggets were down by 1 on the last possession. What was it, like 2 seconds left in the game? Yeah, 2.3 seconds left in the game. Nuggets are trying to inbound it. All of a sudden, you see Tim Hardaway fall to the floor, and they whistle Amen Thompson for the foul. They go to the review. They uphold the call on the floor, that basically saying that Thompson's shin tripped up, hit Tim Hardaway as he was running off of a screen to try and get open, and tripped him. So they upheld the call on the floor when the Rockets challenged. Because the pass was not inbounded yet, that is automatically a free throw, plus the team that is fouled gets the ball. So Jamal Murray goes to the line, hits the free throw to tie the game. And then, oddly enough, they get a great look with Nikola Jokic at the buzzer, a three-pointer, and he made three-pointers all throughout the night. And yet he missed a really good look, and we went into overtime. But you think about how different that situation would have been had they not called the foul, and the Nuggets would be basically going for the win. It would be do or die. They'd either win the game or they'd lose it. But with the foul occurring before the inbound, it put Jamal Murray on the line to tie it, and then the Nuggets had a chance to win the game. So it was unfortunate. I understand where the referees are coming from. If you are a referee on the floor and all of a sudden you see Tim Hardaway just lay out, okay, and you see that Amen Thompson is chasing him, right? It's not like Thompson was too far away. And you know what? This is where we get into letter of the law, right? Letter of the law. Yeah, Thompson kind of was the reason why Tim Hardaway tripped. You look at the replay, and there was, his Thompson's leg grazed Tim Hardaway. It grazed him. But in live action, you're seeing a player just like fall. And I got to imagine for an official, it's very difficult to see that happen, and everyone in the arena to see that happen and not make a call. right? Because it's so jarring. These guys don't fall down on their own. And look, there was a referee standing right there on the backside of that play, saw the contact, albeit very light contact, and then Tim Hardaway falls out. Could you imagine the uproar in Ball Arena if Tim Hardaway just fell down and the referee just let it go? So there was the slightest of contact, and then you have the jarring sight of Tim Hardaway hitting the deck. I can't totally blame the officials for having a knee-jerk reaction. I would say if Tim Hardaway, not that he flopped, but if Tim Hardaway doesn't fall, obviously they don't call it. It was unfortunate because it completely changes the game, because now the Nuggets get that free throw to tie the game. They have the tie in their back pocket. They know they're going to overtime, and then they have a chance to win it versus having a do-or-die shot with 2 seconds to go. Game goes into overtime. Nuggets end up outscoring the Rockets 11-8 and win the game. So I thought it was unfortunate the way things went at the end of regulation. Rockets head coach Ime Udoka had a much stronger take. Go ahead and play that, Ray. So yeah, Ime Udoka is going to get fined. That is a given. If he hasn't been already, I haven't seen anything on a fine, but he went in on the officials, and I understand the frustration there. I think the language that he used was a little bit much. To say that an NBA official was starstruck, that implies something much more devious than just they stunk. But Ime Udoka knows what he's doing, right? The emotion behind it, I can understand. I can completely understand why the Rockets were as frustrated as they were. Ime Udoka is taking this opportunity. There's more to this than just his emotions about that foul call that put the Nuggets on the line to tie the game at the end of regulation. These two teams play again on Saturday. Okay. So it's like Phil Jackson used to do, right? Plant the seed. Steve Kerr does it more than any other coach in the NBA. He knows what the schedule looks like, and he'll say something about the officiating, and with the hope that some things change before the next matchup. But it's not just even the matchup on Saturday. Let's go a step further. The Houston Rockets, in order to beat the Denver Nuggets, and really in order to get to an NBA Finals, they have to be allowed to be physical. They have to be able to bully the Denver Nuggets or the Thunder or any other team they go up against. It's part of their game, right? And it's not egregious what Houston does, but they need that leeway from the officials to be physical, especially against Nikola Jokic, because Alperen Şengün alone is no match for Nikola Jokic. Not that any team really has a match for Nikola Jokic, but the Rockets want to be physical, not just with Jokic, but with Jamal Murray and other players as well. It's part of what makes them such a good team. If they don't get that, if they don't have that leeway, that is a major factor in a series. If Houston is given the leeway to be physical, then that is their key to beating Oklahoma City and Denver. So what Ime Udoka is doing there is planting the seed that, hey, I know we're going to probably get a 7-game series against this team like everybody else thinks we're going to. I'm going to keep harping on this. Fine be damned. And I'm going to make sure that I am influencing to the best of my ability the officials. And which, to me, watching that game last night, again, I'm cool with it. I'm okay with it. I know it's an advantage for Houston, but I enjoy watching the Rockets play. It's not over the line. It's not egregious. And I want the game to be decided by the players on the floor. So in many ways, I agree with Ime Udoka. I'm not going to trash the officials the way that he did. The hyperbole that Ime Udoka was laying out last night in the post-game press conference was about Saturday and beyond. But it was incredibly unfortunate given the high level of skill, the stars that were involved in that game, how great of a game that was, how back and forth it was, for ultimately the most exciting play of the game to be kind of taken away from the players on the court, to put Jamal Murray on the line to ensure that the game would at least go into overtime rather than having the Denver Nuggets inbound it with a chance to either win or lose the game on their next shot. That's unfortunate. That's what you hate to see as an NBA fan. But Ime Udoka is laying the groundwork for future meetings with the Denver Nuggets because the Houston Rockets are going to try to bully the Nuggets as much as they can over a 7-game series. And they're going to try and do it on Saturday when these two teams meet again. It was a fantastic game. Durant, Murray, all the stars came out, and you could see why these two teams are really battling to be considered the biggest threat to Oklahoma City, not just in the West, in the NBA. Right? The West might have 4, maybe 5 teams that are better than anyone right now in the Eastern Conference. So it's Oklahoma City at the top, and it's Houston and Denver battling. And we have seen 2 games that you could put against any other that have been played this season in the NBA. That's how good these 2 matchups are, and I can't wait to see these 2 teams meet up for a 7-game series in the spring. Take your thoughts on last night, 719-247-1313. Have more on last night beyond the game, kind of what I just talked about with the Nuggets and the Rockets. Are they head and shoulders above everyone else because there's a team in action tonight that many people are starting to look in their direction as potentially a spoiler for the teams that we assumed would be the powers in the NBA? We'll talk about that next here on Extra Sports 1300. Welcome back, Drive Time Sports. Ryan Kaufman with you out in Salt Lake City. Tomorrow night, Air Force women's basketball up the road in Logan, Utah. That'll be a 6 o'clock tip if you want to make plans to join me for that. Uh, Thanks to the folks here at Cumulus Salt Lake City for allowing me to hang out for a little bit, do this show. Big story of the day, obviously, is the Denver Nuggets and their win 128-125 over the Houston Rockets. The Denver Nuggets now are 2-0 against both Minnesota and Houston. So when we start to, as we get closer to Christmas, right, that's when the rest of the NBA audience will be tagging along. So nothing is won right now, certainly. But what the Nuggets have been able to do, because they haven't had a chance to play Oklahoma City. They don't play Oklahoma City. I think they play Oklahoma City the last 4 games straight at the end of the season. We've had to wait a very long time for the Denver Nuggets to play OKC. But other than OKC, who are the teams that you want to see the Nuggets play and you want to see them beat? And I think the next 2 on the list would be Houston and Minnesota. And the Nuggets are now 2-0 against both of those teams. And last night, they beat Houston despite still not having Aaron Gordon and Christian Brown. So as we put teams in the right pecking order in the Western Conference, I still think it's OKC 1, and then the teams that are vying for that biggest threat to OKC are Denver and Houston, and I think you have to give Denver the edge. I mean, they played twice. Once on the road, once at home. They beat them both times. Officiating aside, because if we wanted to go, call for call, let's talk about how Nikola Jokic fouled out at the end of that game. Right? Let's not act like the referees were totally one-sided against the Houston Rockets, because that's just not the case. When we talk about how poor the officiating was, and it was poor on both sides. And in what kind of kills me about the whole thing is not only do you have Ime Udoka going on about the officiating, acting like it was just the right, like, look, that play with 2 seconds to go in the game, yes, that was a call against the Rockets. But you take that game overall, there were questionable calls against both teams. And by the way, because you know where I stand on blaming the officials, the Rockets still had a 5-minute overtime, and a 5-minute overtime where the Denver Nuggets ended up losing both Jonas Valanciunas and Nikola Jokic to being fouled out. And they didn't have Christian Brown and Aaron Gordon, 2 of their better defensive players. Okay, so I understand where the Rockets are coming from. I even see what the master plan here is from Ime Udoka. But if we're seriously going to have a conversation about the officiating, let's just call it what it is and say it was questionable on both sides. But here's another clip from last night that I didn't get to that Ray has. This is Alperen Şengün, who was brilliant, absolutely brilliant last night, compared a lot to Nikola Jokic, and was asked when he is going to get the same calls as Nikola Jokic. maybe Alperen Şengün doesn't get every call that Nikola Jokic does. And I've said about Nikola Jokic, I don't like sometimes how much he complains. But the idea that that particular game last night, that Alperen Şengün got no calls. Okay, even if you don't watch the game, I think it's reasonable to assume when both Jonas Valanciunas and Nikola Jokic end up fouling out of that game, that Alperen Şengün got calls. I'm not even saying other than the last foul that was called on Nikola Jokic, that shouldn't have been one. It should have been a foul. If anything, it should have been a foul on Jamal Murray before Nikola Jokic. I don't even think that was on Şengün. But at any rate, I'm not even saying that Şengün got questionable calls going his way, but the premise that Şengün got no calls, that Şengün had to battle all night through physicality and having his arm slapped and all of this kind of stuff, that it's just that's just not true. Like both Jonas Valanciunas and Nikola Jokic fouled out of the game. So this is, to me, this is the same as Ime Udoka. Right? This is politicking. This is about the future matchups. And to be fair to both Udoka and to Alperen Şengün, they were asked the question. It's not like Şengün went to his locker and said, "Hey, everyone gather around. I got a Festivus grievance to air." He was asked the question. But this is Houston using hyperbole to try and influence the officiating for Saturday and what seems inevitably their 7-game series in the playoffs. Which they can do that. Right? It's on the officials to not listen to that stuff, to not be influenced by it. Udoka and Şengün can talk all they want. But Şengün got to, how many times did Alperen Şengün get to the line last night? He shot 6 free throws. So I guess I could see why he was a little bit upset. But if Alperen Şengün is baby Jokic, as people call him, and Nikola Jokic said, don't call him that, said he's his own player, don't compare. But if Şengün reminds you of Nikola Jokic, which he does, what have I said about Nikola Jokic? That the way he plays, it's not like Giannis or Embiid. He's not going through guys to score. There's a lot of finesse in his game. There are jump shots. There are fadeaways. There's a happy medium here, because even those guys get fouled on occasion. But these aren't guys that are going through and initiating contact and doing all of this stuff that much. It's more of a finesse game. So Şengün's probably upset. He only shot 6 free throws. But then on the other side, you have the 2 Nuggets centers both being fouled out in that game. Who were they fouling? Alperen Şengün most of the time. So, again, I understand the frustration. I understand where it's coming from. But the Rockets got a bit hyperbolic last night. Now, back to what I started the segment with. A lot of people, and there's the NBA Cup final tonight, which I don't care what's on the line. But the Spurs are quickly becoming must-watch television. And the other night, they were able to beat Oklahoma City, just the second team this season to beat the reigning champion. And because of that, many people are trying to put the San Antonio Spurs in the same conversation as Houston, Denver, and OKC, and even Minnesota for that matter. I said this going into the season. The San Antonio Spurs are going to be this year's Houston Rockets. They're going to be a team that not many people are paying attention to, that's going to pop up, and they're going to have one of the better records in the West, which is going to be even more eye-popping because of this strength of the West. But they are not ready, and I will maintain this, with San Antonio, as talented as they are and as fast as they are rising. They, at this point, having not played in the postseason, to go from 0 to 60, it's not in the West. I'm sorry. The idea that San Antonio can go from not being a playoff team to taking down Houston, Denver, Minnesota, and OKC all in one foul swoop in one, they wouldn't play all of those teams, but you get what I'm saying. To get out of a conference with those teams, two teams that have won titles recently, another team that has been knocking on the door in Minnesota, and then you have a team in Houston who went through this last year, who is more battle tested, who has some of that scar tissue. Jared Bednar, the Avalanche head coach, used to call it that. San Antonio, they're coming. Make no mistake about it. And we will probably be having this conversation, what I started the show with, talking about Houston and Denver. We're probably going to have that conversation about San Antonio and Denver next year. It can happen quickly, just not this quickly. San Antonio, great win against OKC. They deserve for people to start to tune in, because if you've never seen San Antonio play, tonight would be a great chance for you to do it. They're fun. They're fun. And Wemby is amazing. This is not a knock on San Antonio. This is you don't know what you don't know. Okay, all of these stars in the league had to go through it a little bit, had to have some setbacks, especially for guys who are playing in the Western Conference. So I think when we're looking at the West, I think San Antonio has to be a step below Houston and Denver. And even, I'm not out on Minnesota yet. I'm not giving up on Minnesota yet. Now, I don't think that the Nuggets-Wolves thing is a thing anymore. I think from what I have seen, the Denver Nuggets, with their depth and with a healthy Jamal Murray, they don't seem to have the same problems with Minnesota that they used to. So I don't think it's a terrible matchup for Denver like it has been. But forget the matchup part of it. Minnesota is still, when they are at their best and they're healthy, and Anthony Edwards has been a little bit banged up this year, they can hang with anybody. They deserve to be in that conversation. So I kind of think it's, you go OKC on one level, and then right beneath that, I think you would put Houston, Denver, Minnesota. I think you have to put Denver at the top of that tier, and then maybe Houston, Minnesota, and then there's a little bit more of a gap, and then it gets to San Antonio. That's how quickly they've risen. I'll take them over both LA teams. I'll take San Antonio over everyone that I didn't mention. That's how quickly they have risen and how good they are. But it's almost a bigger step to get from where San Antonio was to where they are right now. Let me put it this way. It's a smaller step for San Antonio to go from where they were to where they are right now than it is to go from where they're at right now to be in the group I just mentioned. Right? You can jump up. We've seen Houston do this last year. Sacramento was one of these teams. we can see teams, if they get a star, they can quickly rise up the ranks. But this is a bigger jump for San Antonio to get to the upper echelon of the West than it has been for San Antonio to be a team that just misses out in the playoffs to getting in the middle of the pack in the West. Still tremendous and a lot of credit to San Antonio. And it means they're on the doorstep. They're going to be a factor in the West as soon as next year. But right now, it would be, I think, borderline disrespectful to jump San Antonio over Houston, over Denver, over Minnesota, and especially over OKC, because there's a way this works. And there are teams that have been through it, that are more battle tested, that know what San Antonio doesn't know yet, what it's going to take to advance deep in the Western Conference playoffs. San Antonio doesn't know that yet. And so to think they're just going to show up and take over the West, it's disrespectful to the teams I just mentioned, including the Denver Nuggets. 719-24-7-1313. More Drive Time Sports after this. This week's nominees for our athlete of the week are up and available for you to vote on. They are Dominic Lewis of St. Mary's, Kalen Pope of Doherty, Wyatt Boley of Cheyenne Mountain, and Paisley Pogue of Discovery Canyon. To find out what they did on the court, the mat, in the pool to warrant nomination, go to extrasports1300.com and cast your vote. The winner will be revealed on Friday. It's our Extra Sports Athlete of the Week, sponsored by Blackjack Pizza and Salads. I am in Salt Lake City right now. Ray Dominguez is back at the Extra Sports 1300 studios, and I am risking my mic being shut off or something worse if I do not mention Ray is Spencer Jones your new favorite Nuggets player? No. I will. I'll give him credit right now. All right. So Spencer Jones last night hits multiple clutch threes, and they're absolutely clutch shots. One was there was one very late in the fourth quarter that he hit. Where is that one? It was I just had it. Anyway, he makes a couple of big 3-pointers. Now, what I would say, to be fair to the situation, look how, and Ray, you'll even have to admit this, how wide open was Spencer Jones on those? Mhm. Mhm. So there's that, but for a guy that most people did not know who he was, unheralded, is being thrust into a bigger and a bigger role as we go along because of all the injuries, and now Peyton Watson is hurt. I think Spencer Jones has been quite the revelation, but it does go to what I have said in the past. You could put a lot of different players on the floor with Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic especially, right? Because that's where all of this stems from, is his ability to find you in the absolute perfect spot. But that two-man game with Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic needs so much attention that it creates opportunities, especially if you are down on the depth chart or the scouting report, right? Because it starts with Murray and Jokic, and then there will be nights where you'll have Aaron Gordon and you got to worry about him more, and then Christian Brown. Even with this iteration of the Denver Nuggets, I think there are other players on the floor with Spencer Jones that you're a little, Cam Johnson being one, where you say we got to worry more about him. So Spencer Jones has been a beneficiary of all the energy and attention that the two-man game between Jokic and Murray requires. But the credit you give him is the same credit I was given to Peyton Watson a few weeks ago. Right? You got to knock down the shots. And Spencer Jones is knocking down the shots. He had and last night it was the clutch shots that he had. He's had other games where he's been more prolific scoring, but Peyton Watson's the same thing. We had this conversation about Peyton Watson. The Nuggets need to be careful not to fall in love with him and not to put themselves in salary cap jail like they have been in for the last few years before they were able to move off of Michael Porter's contract. You can't lock up both Christian Brown and Peyton Watson, and you don't need to. And I think the Nuggets chose right. I think Christian Brown has to be their higher priority than Peyton Watson. But it can be very easy to fall in love with a guy like Peyton Watson, or in this case, Spencer Jones, that get a bigger opportunity for one reason or another, mostly injuries, and they start to shine a little bit. Same thing happened with the Denver Broncos when Peyton Manning was the quarterback. Remember the Jets and how much they paid Eric Decker. Nikola Jokic gets a lot of guys paid. And the Nuggets have to be the organization first and foremost that knows how to separate. I don't want to say fact from fiction, but just to be able to acknowledge what it is and not get duped into overpaying. Because playing with Nikola Jokic, you're going to get a lot of great looks. But credit to Spencer Jones for his ability to hit those shots. And last night was almost more impressive to me than the previous games that he has scored more because they were big shots. In a game that felt like a playoff game against one of the other upper echelon teams in the NBA, Spencer Jones only made 4 shots, but at least 2, maybe 3 of them were extremely consequential. So credit to Ray's new favorite player in Spencer Jones for coming up big for the Denver Nuggets. Here's a here's this stat to throw out there as well. They showed this on the Amazon broadcast last night. Speaking to one of the big areas that the Denver Nuggets have improved. The Nuggets net rating right now without Nikola Jokic on the floor. And remember, they're banged up right now. So they're even more shorthanded than they've normally been. Their net rating without Nikola Jokic on the floor is minus 1.5. Minus 1.5. Last year, it was minus 9.3. The year before, minus 8.6. The year they won the title, minus 10.4. Let's not and Spencer Jones has been part of that, right? Before he's been elevated to the starting lineup and playing with Nikola Jokic more and more, he was a guy that was scoring off the bench. But Jonas Valanciunas last night, 4 of 5, extremely efficient. Tim Hardaway, maybe not his best shooting night, just 2 of 8 from deep, but he has been invaluable. And Bruce Brown, and that's kind of what's funny about last night, is that the Nuggets win that game. Their bench was good, but it's depleted, and it wasn't one of their best games, and yet they still found a way to beat the Houston Rockets 128-125 in overtime. So let's not forget, in addition to everything else Nuggets related, just how important and how huge the additions of Jonas Valanciunas and Tim Hardaway have been. And let's not forget, you look at Cam Johnson, and maybe you juxtapose him with what Michael Porter is doing in Brooklyn. Do not forget that only by making that trade were the Nuggets able to get Valanciunas and Hardaway. Keep that in mind. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, we'll talk Broncos. The thing that here on a Tuesday still sticks with me about how brilliant of a performance it was from the Broncos offense against the Packers. Welcome in hour 2 on this Tuesday. I am coming your way from Salt Lake City on the road with Air Force women's basketball. Thanks to the folks here at Cumulus Salt Lake City for letting me post up for a couple of hours here and do the show. Appreciate those of you watching. Now, a different layout in here, but appreciate you watching all the same on our social media platforms, whether it be YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. The handle is the same in all of those places at XTRA Sports 1300. You can get involved with the program by dropping a comment right there on social media. I can even display it on the live stream. And then while you're there, make sure you like, follow, subscribe, whatever the correct verbiage is, depending on the social media platform. And tell your friends too. We thrive on word of mouth advertising in this business. Spent the first hour on the Nuggets, and you'll be able to hear all that coming up in the 5 o'clock hour. But let's shift our focus to the Denver Broncos. And Tuesday's always an interesting day because it haven't fully shifted from the previous game, but Broncos not meeting with the media. When Sean Payton and Bo Nix meet with the media, it kind of starts a new week. So still left with lingering thoughts from the Packers-Broncos game. And if you have some, feel free to text them in as well, 719-247-1313. The thing that sticks with me, and I contemplate when thinking about the bigger picture with this team and what they're capable of. Once again, the utilization and execution in the deep passing game by Sean Payton and Bo Nix. And there's a great great post or article done by Ollie Connolly, OLLIECONNOLLY, on is his Twitter handle. I highly recommend you do it. If you want to read the whole thing, you have to subscribe, but it's a fascinating look into what Sean Payton did on Sunday. And I'll summarize it. And if you're a real football nerd, and I say that with the utmost affection, you'll really get into it. And how Sean Payton basically spent most of the game setting up the Packers for those deep passes that Bo Nix hit in that second half. But the biggest takeaway from what Ollie Connolly wrote, and it kind of syncs up with some of the things I said yesterday, how much the Broncos, yes, kept to their identity. It started with their ability to run the football. In fact, a lot of the runs they had in that game, Ollie Connolly points out, were kind of fact-finding missions in terms of how the Packers were going to play them, how they were going to line up, all of that kind of stuff. But the Broncos ran the football. Bo Nix had those easy completions, those shorter throws that are paramount in the Broncos offense. And then it seemed like when Pat Surtain picked off that pass, Sean Payton felt like, okay, now it's time to go. The momentum is swung back over. I think he tried to play the game in a very Broncos-like way. But he's talked about this before. Sometimes the circumstances of the game, the way the game unfolds is the way he puts it, mean you have to adjust and maybe you have to change some things. So I think the Broncos went in with every thought that they would try to beat the Packers like they beat most of the teams they've beaten during this 11-game win streak, right? And then the way the game unfolded, plus some of the intel that Sean Payton got over the course of that first half, it was like, okay, Pat Surtain had the interception. Right now is the time to seize the opportunity. Not only were they trailing, but then the momentum was on their side, and there's a real opportunity for the Broncos to take that game back. And that's when Sean Payton started to let Bo Nix let it fly. And it's never one or the other. Right? Sean Payton can get a ton of credit for some of the plays that he called, and he deserves it. But if he doesn't have a quarterback that can hit those throws, then it doesn't mean anything. And the reverse is true too. Let's say Bo Nix can hit deep passes. Well, if the play design isn't there to create the opportunity for a receiver to be running open, like Cortland Sutton was on that fourth down, and there were numerous other times, but that's the play that keeps coming to my mind. That's great play design. And that's a big reason why the Broncos were so successful through the air against the Green Bay Packers. But it just in that second half, it felt like the Broncos knew that more was required in order to beat the Packers. And they probably already thought that going in. But as the game was unfolding, it was certainly like, we can't win the exact same way we always try to win. Not against this team, and not with the scoreboard being where it is. And credit to Sean Payton and Bo Nix for their parts in this, for the Denver Broncos to be able to hit those big pass plays and really attack what is the biggest weakness of the Green Bay Packers, which is a couple of their corners. They're a little bit thin in the secondary. And the Broncos found those matchups and exploited them a lot in the second half. And it was a big reason why they were able to come back and win that game. And it just, now you start thinking back to the Kansas City game. And the question I had after the Kansas City game, my lingering thought into Tuesday and Wednesday after that game was, all right, are we starting to see a trend here with Bo Nix, or the start of a trend where Bo Nix is going to be able to hit some of these deep passes? Is there a Malcolm Gladwell tipping point here? Because I've debunked this myth previously. The idea that Sean Payton doesn't allow Bo Nix to throw the deep ball it's just objectively untrue. Bo Nix is top 10 in the NFL in passes 20 or more yards, just attempts is all I'm talking about. 20 or more yards, 30 or more yards, and 40 or more yards. He's top 10 in all three of those distances. Sean Payton has let him. It's just, if Bo Nix doesn't pay it off by hitting them, then Sean Payton's going to put that away and go the route that we see the Broncos take most of the time. But against Kansas City, they were able to hit those deep passes. And there's been much discussed about Bo Nix's inaccuracy down the field. And that was also, that was true. The idea that Sean Payton wasn't letting him throw the deep ball was not true. The fact that Bo Nix wasn't hitting those passes was true. And then the Vegas and Washington games come along. There were some big pass plays in the Washington game, certainly, but, Evan Ingram, that big, probably the play that sticks out to me is the Evan Ingram pass. I likened it to Tim Tebow and the late Demaryius Thomas. Like, that was Bo Nix throwing it a few yards and Evan Ingram running it a lot of yards. That wasn't a deep pass. That just ended up being a long pass play. But the Raiders in the Commanders game, the Broncos didn't need to rely on them as much. And they could just follow the same blueprint, the same recipe that they followed so often this year. And then the deep ball pops up again against Green Bay. And you wonder if there is a threshold here that Bo Nix has gone through where he's going to be more reliable in those situations moving forward, because those are the type of plays that the Broncos are going to need to advance deep in the AFC playoffs. They're just going to have to, because you're thinning out the herd. Now you have the best of the best, right? New England's legit. Buffalo's legit. You're going to have to go through at least one of those two teams. And Bo Nix is going to have to elevate his game. And so it wasn't necessarily just the fact that the Broncos won that game, although that's one of their better wins, regardless of how it came about. The fact that they beat Green Bay, you could argue Green Bay is the best team on their schedule. But the way they were able to do it is something that I don't know how much they're going to need it down the stretch of this season now with Jacksonville and Kansas City and LA. We'll see how those games play out. But having some confidence in especially Sean Payton having some confidence in Bo Nix to say, if I dial these up, if I give the right play design to get Cortland Sutton or Marvin Mims or Troy Franklin running open, Bo Nix can hit them. They're going to need a couple of those passes in the playoffs. And then the other thing, and I mentioned this yesterday, I think even as much as the game required the Broncos to, let's put it this way, come out of their shell a little bit, I still don't think we see some of those play calls if New England beats Buffalo. I think that the Broncos were in a great situation Sunday afternoon, knowing that regardless of what happened, they were still going to have the number one seed. And look, you don't want to give a game away. That's not what this is. But it gave them a little bit of breathing room, a little bit of latitude to kind of take some chances. And if it backfired, then as unfortunate as that might be, you still wake up the next morning with the top seed in the AFC, and then you get to work on 3 conference opponents, 2 divisional opponents, 1 team that has nothing to play for. Like, if you're the Broncos, you feel you would have still felt very good about getting the top seed given the way your schedule lines up the next 3. So there was kind of a I don't want to say perfect storm, but there was a confluence of events going on that day that allowed the Denver Broncos to take a few more chances, to kind of test it out, push Bo Nix's limits a little bit, let Sean Payton go into his bag a little bit more, get aggressive on 4th down. They were able to try some things because of the Bills winning. And I think the Broncos are better off for it. And I just wonder, and there's no way of fully knowing because it's an alternate reality, if New England wins that game and the Broncos drop to the 2 seed if they lose, do we see that aggressiveness from Sean Payton? Do we see them going for 4 4th downs despite leading in the game? I don't know that we do, but it's only a theory because it's an alternate timeline. Not a Siri, a theory. Cell phone. 719-24-7-1313. More Drive Time Sports after this. Welcome back. Drive Time Sports tonight. The Avs taking on the Kraken. We'll have that game. Our coverage from altitude starting at 7:30. If you want to stay up late for that one, also game. What Ray? What time is Spurs and Knicks? Okay. That's the other big event of the evening. I'm. Go ahead. 6:30. All right. So got a little bit. Like I don't care about the NBA Cup, who's winning that, but the San Antonio Spurs with their win over the OKC Thunder, um, to me have definitely even more so. I mean, Wemby's must-watch television. If you're not watching that guy play basketball, you need to. But the Spurs as a team with the performance they put on against OKC, a team that lost only one game the entirety of the season to that point, I think they deserve more eyeballs. I think they will. I mean, they get the NBA stage, so to speak, to themselves tonight, taking on New York. I don't care what the winner of tonight's game gets. I want more Spurs basketball. And Wemby the other day threw out the word ethical when talking about what the Spurs are doing, and he clarified those comments because everyone I think took it as, the foul baiting that the Oklahoma City Thunder do. Um, but I think that's still part of it. Um, Wemby was talking about like ISO ball, but what happens with the ISO ball? You have guys that are attacking but looking for a foul call. And San Antonio is a little bit more predicated on ball movement. They're not the only team. You know who they remind me of a little bit? They remind me of the Nuggets. I mean, the personnel is a little bit different, but the Nuggets, not just, that famous quote by Calvin Booth about how he's trying to build the Nuggets to be the San Antonio Spurs when they were able to flip from Manu and Tony Parker to Kawhi Leonard. But they also kind of modeled their playing style off of them, and it makes sense, right? Spurs are pretty good blueprint when they had Tim Duncan. So this iteration of the Spurs, they do play the game a lot like the Denver Nuggets, and it is more enjoyable and it is more ethical. And Wemby kind of being the one that says it may be a little bit jarring a little bit because this is a guy that's not that far into the league, but who else is going to say it? Right? Jokic is never going to say it. Like every time anyone says anything, Nikola Jokic always seems like he's pushing back against some notion, whether it's about his greatness or last night it was people calling Şengün baby Jokic, like he's always pushing back against things. It was cool to see Victor Wembanyama, even though he's a European player, kind of bring some of the American mentality into it. Some of the trash talking. He hit some big shots against OKC and was barking at the Thunder. I'm not saying everybody has to be that way, uh, but it is refreshing to see Wemby do that. Now, I think he's getting a little bit big for his britches, so to speak, because he's talking about San Antonio being built for the moment and all this kind of stuff. And as I said earlier, like San Antonio doesn't know what it's going to be like to go through the Western Conference playoff. But I like the swagger and I like the fact that he's, calling out OKC. And I'm not one to complain about them as much as others, but it's it's clear. Like, you see it, the way that Oklahoma City plays, and it almost detracts from just how dominant this team is. They're not beating everybody by 20 because they shoot a bunch of free throws. I mean, some people may think that. That's not why they do it. But when they see Shea get to the line so much, and they see the way that Caruso guards, and then how, you know, apoplectic he gets on the other end because he doesn't get a call, like, it detracts from how good OKC is. And Wemby being the voice of this ethical hoops revolution, the pushback against the way that OKC plays. And so many other teams have adopted that, right? NBA is a copycat league like the NFL is. So you have other teams that play this way. It's not aesthetically pleasing. It's part of the reason why people complain about the NBA. But there are alternatives, and the Nuggets, for the most part, are an alternative to that. San Antonio is. Um, it's just interesting to me if we hear more players start to kind of echo the same sentiments as Victor Wembanyama. But the other night in that semifinal, like, it was ridiculous. I don't know if you've seen the video, but Alex Caruso flew in at the last second of that game from nearly half court. It was on a free throw. Uh, Jalen Williams, not that the Jalen Williams, not the other one that OKC has, intentionally miss a free throw. Caruso comes flying in to try and tip it in or make a shot at the buzzer. And he's probably halfway, he's in the air, almost all the way out of bounds when he finally gets the ball, and he gets nudged, and he and Isaiah Hartenstein are going up the tunnel after the game is over, complaining how they didn't get the calls. That makes it even worse. So, now Wemby quickly becoming a superstar in this league, and kind of going at OKC, a team that most people that are NBA fans don't love watching, even if deep down they know just how great that team is. They don't like a lot of the stuff that they do. So San Antonio and the Knicks coming up tonight, as Ray said, at 6:30 in the NBA Cup final, if that's more your speed on that one. 719-247-1313. Why don't we take another break here, and we'll come back with more Drive Time Sports right after this. Drive Time Sports coming your way from Salt Lake City tomorrow night. Air Force women's basketball taking on Utah State in their conference opener. And also tomorrow, the Air Force men's basketball team will be in action in their first conference game. Jim Arthur will be out in San Diego. Pretty good place to be. I love Salt Lake City, though. If I live in the place that I want to live, I can say that. But if I were to go elsewhere, Vegas would be one on my list, and Salt Lake City would be another. And I know that it's a little bit different, but I'd have to make a decision about what kind of, what I want to do for fun while I'm there. But really like Salt Lake City. Probably not surprising. It's not that different than Colorado, but appreciate the folks here at Cumulus Salt Lake City for allowing me to post up and do my show today. So 5:30 is when our coverage begins for women's basketball tomorrow. I'll be on the call for that one, obviously. And then at 8:30 over on 740 KVOR is when Jim Arthur will be on the call that is 8:30, and it's, man, that's one thing. You got to be careful raising, too many grievances in my line of work because it's pretty good gig. Don't have a lot of complaints. The games that are moved to very late at night because of television, I'm glad I don't have to deal with that. I'll say that much. So, Air Force men's and women's basketball opening up their conference play tomorrow night. Women's game here on Extra Sports 1300 and the men's game over on KVOR. Joe Klatt, we got the college football playoff coming up this weekend. And Joe Klatt, former CU Buff, had some comments that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. Talking about access to the college football playoff. And I think his assertion was basically, we don't want to see Cinderellas. We want to see the best teams. And he went in on the NCAA basketball tournament and how unfair that is and how much of a joke it is. And it was probably a little bit too strong. But I've kind of went back and forth about this over the past couple of weeks, and we talked about this when the field was released. I just don't know that this tournament selection committee, if you will, the college football playoff committee, is capable of navigating the fact that there's access for group of 5 teams. And what I mean by that is that they have to put this one team in to give access, and then they screw up everything else. And obviously Notre Dame being the big team that was left out, I think I agree. I think I agree with Joel Klatt more than I think a lot of people do. I don't know that you want to try and recreate what the NCAA basketball tournament is. It's such a unique sporting event. To try and mirror it in any other sport, I don't know that you can. And to me, I like Cinderellas and I like the idea of access, but I just feel after the last couple of college football playoff brackets are announced, I go, I don't think these are the best teams. And part of me does want to see the best teams. But then I think about the NFL and it's like, look at each side of the bracket. Like we're going to get a team, even though I think I said this after Tampa lost the other night. I think Todd Bowles' tirade is going to light a fire under this team. I think it's going to galvanize them. I think we're going to see better from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to close out this season. I do think they end up winning the NFC South. But right now, they're a 7-7 team. I don't want to get on the bad side of my producer, but we know that there is a division in the AFC that has left a little something to be desired. I know I am being careful, Ray. I know I'm talking about the Ravens. I'm not talking about your victorious Steelers from last night. But there's a way for these teams to get in. You win your division. So, like, I want the best teams. So that's where I agree with Joel Klatt. It's like my desire more than Cinderella. I don't think it's about Cinderella. I don't need to see a Cinderella in the NFL playoffs. But I'm okay with what is in place. That happens to open the door for Cinderella, if that makes sense. The agreed upon rules are a group of 5 team is going to be able to get in. The top ranked group of 5 team gets in. I'm fine with that. Some years it'll be a very interesting team, and other years it probably not going to be a great team. So if those are the rules that are agreed upon, I guess in some ways I'm okay with it, but the NFL is also a little bit different animal, and you can hear that I'm waffling back and forth on this. I don't mean to, but like in the NFL, the separation of talent is not as great as it is in college sports. So when you include somebody with the group of 5, you're letting in many cases, even if it's a pretty decent group of 5 team, you're letting in a much lesser team than most of the teams in the field. You just are. And so I guess what I'm saying is if they want to give access to the group of 5, I'm fine with that. If those are the agreed upon rules. But part of me agrees with Joel Klatt in saying more than anything, I just kind of want the best teams. And who knows what the future of the college football playoff is going to be, what the access is going to look like. I get where he's coming from. And I think I would much rather watch Notre Dame as part of this field than Tulane. Or more accurately, James Madison. I guess that's the team I should be looking at, not Tulane. So I get it. I mean, if it's the agreed upon rules, then fine. You leave in the ability for a group of 5 team to get in for the sake of access. That's fine, but get it right elsewhere. Just get it right with everybody else. And I don't know that they can do that. But this thing starts up this week. Indiana is the big story, and we'll have to wait a little bit. And Texas Tech as well. I'm very interested to see Texas Tech. It's a conundrum. The college football is moving more and more towards the NFL, yet they're trying to straddle the line and still be college sports by allowing one of the little guys in. And I think it's going to be a more difficult line to toe.
as we move forward. But yeah, Joel Klatt getting a lot of heat today. I like Joel Klatt though. I mentioned earlier Avalanche tonight taking on the Seattle Kraken. Dave Haxtell revenge game. If like honestly, I'm being serious here. Like if there is any game for the Avalanche power play to get right, it's got to be this one, right? This is a Dave Haxtell revenge game. Dave Haxtell was fired by the Seattle Kraken. If there is one game that should bring out the best in Dave Haxtell to be able to draw it up for the Avalanche power play to succeed, it should be this game. Dave Haxtell should be taking a page, from Sean Payton, in that this is a game where you pull out all the stops. You want to get over on the team that fired you. Figure out a way for this Avalanche power play to produce. Because every day we're inching closer and closer to where the process doesn't matter as much and it becomes results. The Avalanche can't be one of the 5 or 6 worst power play teams in the league and expect to win a Stanley Cup. They just can't. It can't be that much of a liability. If they get to be middle of the road in the NHL, I think that might even be okay. But they're near the bottom, and that can't continue. Now, because everything else is so good, they're still rolling through their schedule, and we still have essentially half the season left for the Avs to figure this thing out, but they got to figure it out. So why not tonight, Dave Haxtell drawing up the right game plan for the Avalanche power play to break through against the Seattle Kraken. Won't be easy. Seattle, a decent penalty killing team, I think, last time I looked. But that's the big thing tonight. If this isn't a showcase game, if it's not about, getting back a star or something, for me, the default is going to be the power play. Now that both goaltenders are back, they're both playing well. Jared Bednar kind of going back and forth between the two. I'm fine with it. Eventually, we have to have a conversation about who starts game 1 of the Stanley Cup playoffs. That's not right now. So when I look at tonight's game, it's the power play. And to a lesser extent, whether Nathan MacKinnon can keep putting up the numbers he's putting up, leading the NHL in points. So that's coming up. You can hear our coverage from Altitude, or Altitude's coverage on this station, starting at 7:30. One other Broncos note to pass along. This came out and it was interesting, and it just speaks to how the Broncos elevated their game in a game that felt like a playoff game. It felt like a showcase game. And the way that the Broncos elevated their game, mostly we talk about the offense doing that. And they did. And they did more so than the defense. But let's not forget what the defense was able to do. Create 2 turnovers for a team that was not creating a lot of turnovers this season. And also this coming from Next Gen Stats. The Broncos pressured Jordan Love more than Jordan Love has ever been pressured in a single NFL game in his entire career. They brought more pressure. They got more pressure on Jordan Love. And that makes sense. You go back, how many times did Jordan Love have to throw it off of his back foot? He was under a lot of pressure in that game. But Next Gen Stats came out and said it's the most pressure he's ever faced in an NFL game. So while there's, more room to grow for the offense, right? When the offense really pops like they did on Sunday, it's more eye-catching. The defense is already at a high level. It's kind of hard to discern when they're playing at their very best, because even not their very best is still really, really good. But the turnovers were one way that you saw it. That was the easiest way, right? Pat Surtain getting the pick, Riley Moss getting his pick as well. That was big for the Denver Broncos, and that showed another gear, if you will, that this defense might be able to go to create turnovers. But even in something that they do about as well as anybody, as they continue to try and chase down those 85 Bears in terms of the number of sacks, it may not have been the most pressure the Broncos defense has gotten on any quarterback, but for them to get the most pressure that Jordan Love has ever faced in his career, that's saying something. And that shows the defense. We can't focus solely on the Broncos offense. The defense had a huge role in them winning that football game. And that, from Next Gen Stats, just shows that the defense elevated their game. Maybe not as much as the offense, because, again, there's more room for the offense to grow, but the most pressure that Jordan Love has faced in his entire career in that game. So I said simply beating the Packers may not change the perception of this team, but as the way it played out, some of these ancillary little factoids that are coming out, maybe that does change it. But as I said yesterday on the show, I don't know what the Broncos would do if they were universally respected. I don't think they'd function very well if they were being loved on by every pundit out there. They thrive on the perceived or the very real lack of respect. But some of these things that are coming out of that game and just watching that game, maybe the way it played out gets some more people on board with the Denver Broncos. Jags coming up on Sunday. We'll get into that as the week, later in the week. Sean Payton talked about it yesterday. Kind of his own version of the Kobe job's not finished. Said they haven't checked any of the boxes. They haven't accomplished any of their goals. The division is as simple as this. Broncos win, Chargers don't win, AFC West goes to the Broncos. To clinch the top seed in the AFC, it's a Broncos win, and it's a lot of other stuff regarding the Patriots and the Bills. Like, the Broncos got to win, and everybody close to them has to lose. But in terms of the division, it's pretty simple. Broncos beat the Jags. Chargers don't win, lose, or tie their game on Sunday. The Broncos will be AFC West champions. And unless this domino effect of all of these different things needing to happen, I think one of the sentiments that I have heard from people is how disappointing it is that the game at Arrowhead on Christmas doesn't mean anything, or means far less. Well, unless a whole bunch of stuff happens on Sunday, the Broncos could be going into Arrowhead with a chance to clinch home field. So yeah, you're not getting the consequence on the other side from the Kansas City Chiefs, but a trip to Arrowhead still has meaning potentially for the Denver Broncos on Christmas. But first up, Jacksonville and a chance to clinch the AFC West. It feels like a formality at this point, but they want to check that box, as they were able to check the box on Sunday of clinching a playoff spot. That'll do it for the show. Again, my thanks to the folks here at Cumulus Salt Lake for having me out. My thanks to Ray Dominguez back at the Extra Sports 1300 studios. I'm going to head up the road to Logan. I'll talk to you tomorrow night for Air Force women's basketball against Utah State. Don't forget, 7:30 with a shortly after 8 o'clock puck drop, Avs and Kraken right here on Extra Sports 1300.